Lucia listened carefully before speaking up. Obby, it's not good to be an idle wife. Men believe that a woman should also support her husband to make the family flourish, she explained. Once upon a time, in a big city in Nigeria, there were two best friends named Lucia and Obby. They had been friends since they were little, and their families were also very close. Lucia worked at the bank, and Obby had her own business selling clothes for kids. Lucia and Obby did everything together. They shared secrets, laughed together, and helped each other whenever they could. But deep down, Obby sometimes felt jealous of Lucia. She thought Lucia was doing better than her, and it made her feel sad. One sunny day, Lucia walked into Obby's shop with a big smile on her face. "Hello, Obby, how are you today?" Lucia asked cheerfully. Obby forced a smile back. "I'm fine, Lucia," she replied, though her voice sounded a bit low. Lucia noticed something was wrong. "Are you okay, Obby? You seem a little down today," she said with concern. Obby hesitated for a moment before finally speaking up. "Well, Lucia, sometimes I can't help but feel like I am not doing okay. I am not doing better. Just look at you. You have a good job at the bank, and you always seem so happy." Lucia was surprised to hear this. "Oh, Obby, don't be silly. You're doing great with your business, and I'm always here to support you however I can," she reassured her friend. Obby sighed. "I know, Lucia, but it's hard not to compare myself to you sometimes. I just wish I could be as successful as you are." Lucia reached out and gave Obby a warm hug. "You don't need to compare yourself to anyone, Obby. You are unique and amazing just the way you are. And remember, true success is not just about money or job titles. It's about being happy and content with who you are." Obby smiled, feeling a little better. "Thank you, Lucia. You always know how to make me feel better." The two friends spent the rest of the day together, chatting and laughing like they always did. And as they walked home in the evening, Obby felt grateful to have a friend like Lucia by her side. As time passed, Obby met a man named Osita, who was a businessman in the big market of their city. They became friends, and Osita showed Obby a lot of love. Eventually, Obby fell for his charm, and they got married. Lucia, her best friend, was overjoyed for Obby's newfound happiness and wished her well in her new home. At first, Obby's life with Osita seemed perfect. She was happy and content, believing she had everything she ever wanted. However, as time went on, things started to change. Obby became so comfortable in her marriage that she stopped taking her business seriously. Eventually, she became a full-time housewife, depending entirely on Osita for everything. Unknown to Obby, her decision to become a housewife caused a strain in her marriage. Osita was frustrated because Obby wasn't contributing financially to the family. He started treating her differently, and their once peaceful home became a battlefield. However, Obby never confided in Lucia about her struggles, wanting to maintain the illusion of a perfect marriage. One evening, as Obby sat alone in their dimly lit living room, she heard the door creak open. Oster stumbled in, reeking of alcohol. Obby's heart sank as she realized he had been out late again. "Where have you been, Oster?" she asked softly, trying to hide her fear. Oster's eyes narrowed as they glared at her. "It's none of your business, Obby. Just mind your own business like you always do." He spat out, his words dripping with venom. Obby bit her lip, trying to hold back her tears. She knew she couldn't confront him, fearing what he might do if she angered him further. Instead, she plastered a fake smile on her face and pretended that everything was fine. Days turned into weeks, and Obby's marriage continued to deteriorate. She discovered that Osita was having a secret affair outside their marriage, but she couldn't bring herself to confront him. Fear kept her silent, and she endured his mistreatment in silence. Whenever Lucia asked about her marriage, Obby would paint a picture perfect image, hiding the truth behind a mask of happiness. Oh, Lucia, my marriage with Osita is wonderful. He is the best man on earth. We are so happy together, she would say, forcing a smile to mask her pain. But deep down, Obby longed for the friendship and support she once shared with Lucia. She wished she could confide in her friend, but the fear of judgment and shame held her back. As the days passed, Obby's burden grew heavier, and she found herself trapped in a cycle of fear and despair. Little did she know, her silence was only prolonging her suffering, and the truth would come to light. Months passed, and Lucia found the love of her life, Edward. Their love was strong and unbreakable. Edward was every woman's dream, and Lucia felt like the luckiest girl in the world to have him. They spent their days together, getting to know each other and building their relationship. One day, Lucia decided to visit her friend Obby, whom she hadn't seen for a very long time. Obby was overjoyed to see her best friend, and they spent the day reminiscing about old times and catching up on each other's lives. As they sat together in Obby's cozy living room, Lucia couldn't help but notice the sadness in her friend's eyes. Obby, my friend, is everything okay with you? She asked, concern evident in her voice. Obby forced a smile. Of course, Lucia, everything is great, she replied, though her voice lacked its usual cheerfulness. Lucia decided to share her exciting news with Obby. I have something to tell you. I met someone special. His name is Edward, and we are planning to get married in 3 months, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with joy. Obby's heart sank at the news. She felt a pang of jealousy for her friend, who always seemed to get everything she wanted. But she pushed aside her own feelings and put on a brave face for Lucia. That's wonderful news, Lucia. I'm so happy for you, she said, trying to sound genuine. They hugged each other tightly, but deep down, Obby couldn't shake off the sadness that lingered in her heart. She wished she could be as happy as Lucia, but her own marriage was far from perfect. As they said their goodbyes, Obby watched Lucia leave with a heavy heart. She couldn't help but wonder why life seemed to favor her friend, why she struggled to find happiness in her own marriage. Inside Obby's house, the war between her and her husband Osita raged on. Obby suffered in silence, with no one to turn to for help. Even when she spent time with her friend Lucia, she continued to praise her marriage and husband, painting a picture of perfection. One day, as they sat together in Obby's living room, Lucia couldn't hold back her concern any longer. Obby, I've been thinking, why did you stop your business? She asked gently. Obby hesitated for a moment before responding. Well, Lucia, I have everything I want in life now. I don't need to work when I have the best husband ever. Lucia listened carefully before speaking up. Obby, it's not good to be an idle wife. Men believe that a woman should also support her husband to make the family flourish, she explained. She reminded Obby of the time when Osita had supported her business When they first started dating, Osita didn't do that because he had excess money. He did it because he wanted the best for you and wanted you to stand on your feet, Lucia pointed out. Lucia encouraged Obby to think about the kind of person Osita saw her as. Don't get carried away with luxurious things. Try building your business again, she advised. But Obby brushed off Lucia's concerns, insisting that everything was fine with her and Osita. Don't worry about me, Lucia. My husband isn't complaining about anything, she said, trying to reassure her friend. However, Lucia knew it was important to speak up, even if it meant risking their relationship. It's just an advice, Obby. I thought I should say it instead of keeping quiet, she replied earnestly. As they sat in silence, Obby couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that maybe Lucia was right, but the fear of confronting her husband and the uncertainty of starting over kept her from taking actions. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, until finally, the day of Lucia and Edward's wedding arrived. It was a grand affair, filled with love and laughter. Obby and her husband Osita were there to cheer her up, despite the struggles they faced in their marriage. As Lucia and Edward exchanged vows, Obby couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. She watched as her friend married the love of her life, wishing she could find the same happiness in her own marriage. After the wedding ceremony, Lucia and Edward embarked on their new life together. Edward was successful in his business, and Lucia excelled in his career. Their home was filled with happiness and joy, and Obby couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy each time she visited. During one of her visits, Obby couldn't resist bringing up her own marital struggles. Lucia, why does Edward just sit around while you do all the chores? My husband helps me with everything, even cooking and cleaning, she remarked, hoping to plant seeds of doubt in her friend's mind. Lucia listened attentively, feeling a sense of unease creeping over her. Well, Obby, maybe I should talk to Edward about helping out more around the house, she replied, considering her friend's words. Obby continued to sow seed of doubt in Lucia's mind, sharing stories of her own husband's helpfulness and suggesting that Edward needed to do more to support his wife. With time, Lucia began to feel more and more frustrated with Edward's lack of involvement in household chores. She started to wonder if her friend was right, that perhaps Edward needed to step up and be more helpful. And so, the seed of doubt planted by Obby began to grow, causing tension and discord in Lucia and Edward's otherwise blissful marriage. One evening, Obby sat on her bed, engrossed in a phone call with her best friend Lucia. Lucia poured out her frustration about her husband Edward, who seemed to be neglecting her and taking her for granted. Obby listened intently, her mind already devising a plan to sow discord in Lucia's marriage. Lucia, you can't let Edward treat you like this, Obby advised, her voice dripping with malice. Men are wicked creatures who always want to keep women under their control. You need to stand up for yourself. Lucia sighed, feeling torn between her loyalty to her friend and her love for her husband. But Obby, what should I do? I don't want to cause more problems in my marriage, she replied, her voice filled with uncertainty. Obby's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she shared her plan with Lucia. Don't cook for him tonight. Lucia, let him see how it feels to fend for himself. You can't be a slave to any man, especially not your husband, she urged. Reluctantly, Lucia agreed to Obby's suggestion, hoping it would bring some change in her marriage. They bid each other farewell, and Obby smiled to herself, feeling triumphant. As she hung up the phone, Obby's mind raced with thoughts of victory. She couldn't stand the thought of Lucia being the only one happy in her marriage, while she suffered in hers. To Obby, bringing down another person's happiness was a way of asserting her own superiority. And so, with a wicked smile on her face, Obby plotted to disrupt Lucia and Edward's marital bliss, determined to prove that she could win in life even if it meant tearing down others in the process. Little did she know that her actions would have far-reaching consequences, not just for Lucia and Edward, but for their friendship as well. Back at Obby's house, despite the strained relationship between her and Osita, she still made food for her husband every night, hoping to mend their marriage. But most nights, Osita arrived home late and hardly touched Obby's food, causing tension to linger between them. Meanwhile, at Lucia's house, her friendship with Obby took a toll on her marriage. Lucia allowed Obby's jealousy to dictate her actions, leading to a heated argument with her husband, Edward. Edward arrived home hungry, only to find no food prepared, which sparked his frustration. Lucia, why have you suddenly changed? This isn't like you, Edward questioned, his voice filled with disappointment. Lucia felt a pang of guilt as she realized the impact of her actions on her marriage. She listened as Edward expressed his concerns, and they talked through their issues, determined to work on their relationship. After their heartfelt conversation, Lucia made dinner for them to share, and to her surprise, Edward offered to help in the kitchen. As they cooked together, Lucia felt a sense of closeness and unity with her husband. Amidst the aroma of food filling their home, Lucia gathered the courage to share some exciting news with Edward. "Baby, I'm pregnant," she announced, her eyes shining with happiness. Edward's face lit up with joy, and he pulled Lucia into a tight embrace. "I love you so much, Lucia. No one will ever come between us," he declared, his voice filled with love and determination. As they sat down to enjoy their meal, Lucia and Edward's hearts were filled with hope for their future together, strengthened by their commitment to each other and their unborn child. As Lucia and Edward found comfort and strength in each other's arms, Lucia made the difficult decision to distance herself from her friendship with Obby. Whenever Obby called to visit, Lucia would make excuses, claiming she had visitors or maybe she was busy at home. She avoided discussing her marriage with Obby, giving her the impression that things were not well between her and Edward. During their rare encounters, Lucia would nod along as Obby complained about men, reinforcing her belief that men were untrustworthy and deceitful. Obby remained oblivious to Lucia's pregnancy, as Lucia kept the news to herself, feeling betrayed by her friend's jealousy and meddling in her marriage. One day, as Lucia and Edward entered a supermarket near Obby's house, Obby caught sight of them and was surprised to see Lucia pregnant. She felt a pang of anger that her friend had kept such important news from her and had reconciled with her husband without telling her. Feeling a sense of guilt and longing for their friendship, Lucia decided to visit Obby and try to mend their relationship. She discussed her plans with Edward, her husband, who supported her decision, knowing how important Obby was to Lucia. And so, in 3 days' time, Lucia set out to visit her friend Obby, hoping to bridge the gap that had formed between them and find a way to rebuild their friendship. As Lucia approached Obby's house, her heart raced with anticipation. She hoped that Obby would be willing to listen and forgive her, and that they could start anew as friends. So on that day, Lucia had no idea what she was walking into at her friend's house. As she approached Obby's house, her heart filled with hope for reconciliation, but what she found inside shattered her world. Inside Obby's house, a scene of chaos unfolded. Obby and her husband Oster were in the midst of a heated argument that escalated into violence. Lucia's heart sank as she witnessed Osita raise his hand to strike Obby. Shock and horror filled Lucia as she rushed to intervene, her mind reeling with disbelief at the sight of her friend being subjected to such cruelty. She couldn't believe that Obby had been suffering in silence, hiding the truth of her abusive marriage from her. "Stop it, Oster! Leave her alone!" Lucia cried out, her voice trembling with anger and fear. Oster's eyes flashed with fury as he turned his attention to Lucia. "This is none of your business, Lucia. Stay out of it," he barked, his voice filled with contempt. But Lucia refused to back down. She stood her ground, determined to protect her friend from further harm. As Oster continued to hurl insults and accusations at Obby, Lucia felt a surge of anger and indignation rise within her. Finally, Oster stormed out of the house, leaving Obby and Lucia alone in the aftermath of his rage. Obby's eyes were filled with shame and humiliation as she looked at her friend, unable to meet Lucia's gaze. "I'm sorry, Lucia. I never meant for you to see this," Obby whispered, her voice trembling with emotions. Tears filled Lucia's eyes as she wrapped her arms around her friend, offering comfort and support in the midst of their shared pain. "It's not your fault, Obby. You don't deserve to be treated like this," she whispered back, her voice choked with emotion. Together, they sat in silence, the weight of their shared secrets and struggle hanging heavy in the air. And as Lucia left Obby's house that day, her heart was heavy with the realization that her friend had been suffering in silence while she remained oblivious to her pain. As she walked home, Lucia couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal and guilt that gnawed at her conscience. She couldn't understand why her best friend had lied to her and why she had tried to sabotage her own marriage out of jealousy and insecurity. That evening, when Edward returned home from work, Lucia sat him down and poured out everything that had transpired at Obby's house. She recounted the shocking revelation of Obby's abusive marriage and how her friend had been living in a lie to hide her suffering. As Lucia spoke, Edward listened intently, his heart heavy with sadness for Obby and anger towards Oster. He couldn't believe that such cruelty could exist between closed doors, and he felt a deep sense of compassion for his wife's friend. Lucia went on to explain how Obby's jealousy and insecurities had led her to sabotage her own marriage, closing down her own business and causing rifts in her relationship with Osita. She emphasized that while Obby's actions were wrong, they didn't justify the violence she endured in her marriage. With tears in her eyes, Lucia pleaded with Edward to accompany her to Obby and Oster's house the next day, hoping that they could help mend their friend's fractured marriage. Edward nodded in agreement, his heart filled with empathy for Lucia and determination to support her in any way he could. "Of course, my love, I'll be there for you, no matter what," he assured her, wrapping her in a comforting embrace. Feeling grateful for her husband's understanding and unwavering support, Lucia took a moment to apologize for her past behavior, acknowledging the mistakes she had made under Obby's influence. "I'm sorry for the way I acted before, my love. I let Obby's words cloud my judgment, but I promise to do better from now on," she confessed, her voice filled with sincerity. Edward smiled softly, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. It's okay, baby. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them and move forward together, he replied, his love for his wife shining brightly in his eyes. With their hearts united and their resolve strengthened, Lucia and Edward embraced each other, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as team. And as they prepared to confront the difficult truths of their friend's troubled marriage, they took comfort in the knowledge that they had each other's love and support to guide them through the darkness. The next day, and the time came for Edward and Lucia to visit Obby and Osita's house. As they arrived, they could feel the tension in the air, knowing that difficult conversations lay ahead. Obby, feeling ashamed and remorseful for her actions, knelt before Lucia and Edward, her eyes filled with tears as she begged for forgiveness. Lucia, touched by her friend's sincerity, found it in her heart to forgive Obby, knowing that holding on to anger would only breed more pain. With forgiveness granted, Edward took the lead in addressing the issues that had plagued Obby and Osita's marriage. He spoke of the importance of hard work, patience, and mutual support in a marriage. Marriage isn't just about love, it's about commitment and effort, Edward explained, his voice gentle yet firm. But partners need to contribute and support each other to make the relationship thrive. He turned to Obby, expressing his disappointment that she had to close down her business and become dependent on Osita. Marriage shouldn't be a reason to give up on your dreams and ambitions. You should strive to be independent and fulfill your potentials, he advised, his words resonating with Obby. Then Edward addressed Osita, condemning his actions of violence towards Obby. Resorting to physical violence is never acceptable, no matter the circumstances, Edward stated firmly. Communication is key in any relationship. Instead of lashing out in anger, you should have talked to Obby and addressed your concerns calmly. Oster hung his head in shame, realizing the gravity of his actions and the pain he had caused his wife. He nodded in agreement with Edward's words, silently vowing to do better and be a better husband to Obby. As the conversation continued, Lucia and Edward emphasized the importance of open communication, trust, and respect in a marriage. They encouraged Obby and Oster to work together as a team, to listen to each other's needs and concerns, and to find common ground in their relationship. By the end of their visit, tensions had eased and a sense of hope filled the room. Obby and Osita embraced each other, ready to embark on a journey of healing and reconciliation. As Edward and Lucia bid farewell to their friends, they knew that their visit had brought about a positive change, paving the way for Obby and Osita to rebuild their marriage with love, understanding, and forgiveness. As they walked away from Obby and Osita's house hand in hand, Lucia and Edward felt grateful for the opportunity to help their friends and strengthen their bond as a couple. For in the end, they know that love, compassion, and unity were the keys to overcoming any obstacle, and together they would face whatever challenges came their way. After Edward and Lucia left, a sense of remorse washed over Osita as he reflected on his actions towards his wife, Obby. He realized the pain and suffering she must have endured, and he felt a deep sense of regret for his behavior. Approaching Obby with a heavy heart, Osita held her close, his arms enveloping her in a comforting embrace. I'm so sorry, Obby. I never meant to hurt you, he murmured, his voice filled with sincerity. Tears welled up in Obby's eyes as she listened to her husband's heartfelt apology. I forgive you, Osita. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. In that moment, a weight seemed to lift off their shoulders as they let go of the pain and resentment that had clouded their marriage. They held each other tightly, finding solace and comfort in each other's arms, with tears of relief and gratitude streaming down their faces. Obby and Osita made a silent vow to each other. They promised to cherish and support one another, to communicate openly and honestly, and to never let anger or violence mar their love again. As they embraced each other, a sense of renewal and hope filled their hearts. They knew that their journey towards healing and reconciliation would not be easy, but they were determined to face it together as partners united in love and forgiveness. And as they held each other close, Obi and Osta felt a newfound sense of peace and strength, ready to embark on a new chapter of their marriage with renewed faith and commitment. After helping their friends, Obi and Osita, reconcile their marriage, Lucia and Edward felt a sense of joy and commitment. They knew that their support had made a difference in their friends' lives, and they were grateful for the opportunity to help them mend their relationship. As they walked hand in hand, Lucia turned to Edward with a smile. Thank you, Edward, for standing by me and supporting me through everything. I couldn't have done it without you, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Edward returned her smile, squeezing her hands affectionately. You are welcome, Lucia. I will always be here for you no matter what, he replied, his love for his wife shining brightly in his eyes. Together, they reflected on the journey they had been on, from the ups and downs of their marriage to the challenges they had faced in helping their friends. Through it all, they had grown closer and stronger as a couple, united in their love and commitment to each other. As they reached their home, Lucia and Edward felt a sense of peace and happiness wash over them. They knew that no matter what obstacles they face in the future, they would overcome them together as partners and best friends. As they settled into their home, surrounded by love and laughter, they knew that their story was just beginning. For in the end, they had learned that with love, patience, and understanding, anything was possible. The tale of Lucia and Obby came to a happy ending, filled with love, forgiveness, and the promise of a bright future ahead. And as they lived happily ever after, they knew that their friendship would endure, bound by the bonds of love and friendship that had brought them together in the first place. The most important lesson in this story is that true friendship means supporting each other through good times and the bad times, and being honest and open with one another, because when we hide our struggles and pretend everything is perfect, we not only hurt ourselves but also miss out on the opportunity for genuine connection and support from those who care about us. Similarly, in marriage, it's important to communicate openly, respect each other's dreams and aspirations, and work together as a team, because marriage is a partnership built on love, trust, and understanding. And when we let jealousy, insecurity, or pride get in the way, we risk damaging the very foundation of our relationship. Furthermore, it's crucial to recognize the signs of domestic violence and seek help, because no one deserves to suffer in silence or endure abuse. And by speaking up and reaching out for support, we can break the cycle of violence and find the courage to rebuild our lives with dignity and strength. And with that, my dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures, where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now, and may your dreams be filled with joy, wonder, and endless possibility. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.